I wasn't supposed to be there. They made that crystal clear. But I showed up anyway with a card, a navy dress, and 18 seconds of video that ended a wedding before the vows were even finished. Let me back up. My name is Camille. I'm 31 years old. I work in financial compliance. And for most of my adult life, I was the person my family called when things fell apart. Not because I was the oldest, not because I was the loudest, but because I was the one who actually showed up with a checkbook and no questions. My younger sister, Natalie, had always been the magnetic one. The kind of person who walked into a room and made everyone feel like they'd been waiting for her. Funny, charming, a little reckless in ways that people found endearing rather than exhausting. I loved her for it, even when it cost me. And it did cost me. More than I ever let myself admit. It started on a Tuesday evening in October. The kind of night that smells like cinnamon candles and suburban restlessness. I was standing in line at a home goods store with a cart full of throw pillows. I absolutely did not need a velvet one. A burlap one with the word gather stitched across it. A ceramic pumpkin that somehow made it into my arms without me noticing. I was about to pay when my phone buzzed. 6 words from Natalie. You're out of the wedding. Real family only. No emoji. No explanation. No call to follow up. I stood there holding that ceramic pumpkin, reading those words 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. My first thought was that it was a mistake. A misdirected text. A terrible joke. Natalie and I hadn't fought. We hadn't even had a tense conversation in weeks. I'd just gotten off a call with her florist 3 days earlier, talking through centerpiece arrangements for 42 tables. Then I opened the family group chat. The thread was already moving fast. Her bridesmaid, Courtney, had dropped a crying, laughing emoji. Natalie followed it with, "Let's just keep the energy clean for my day. Camille's not really part of this anymore." A cousin chimed in almost immediately. "Didn't she literally just pay for your dress fitting?" Natalie's response came in under 30 seconds. "Yeah. Well, that's canceled too. She can take her charity back." More laughing reactions filled the screen. Not one person said a word in my defense. Not one. I set the ceramic pumpkin back on the shelf. I left the cart exactly where it was. I walked out into the cold parking lot, got in my car, and drove home in complete silence, the kind of silence that has weight to it, that you feel behind your eyes and in the base of your throat. I sat down on my couch, the beige sectional Natalie had once called boring and safe, which I now appreciated as an accurate description of my entire personality before that night, and I opened my banking app. I scrolled for a long time. It wasn't just money I was looking at. It was a record. A timeline. Evidence of every time I had been the safety net. The solution. The person who made the problem disappear quietly so no one else had to feel the discomfort of it. I'd covered her rent twice when she was in her mid-20s and figuring things out. I'd paid off a credit card balance she swore she'd never touch again and then touched again 8 months later. I'd co-signed on her first apartment because her credit score was a number I was asked not to repeat out loud. And for this wedding, her wedding, I had personally handled the catering deposit, the DJ booking, the full floral contract, and the photography retainer. She told me she was tight on money. She told me I was the only one she trusted with something this important. She'd said it with her hand on my arm and tears in her eyes, and I had believed every word of it. That was 6 weeks ago. I went back to the group chat. Still active. Cousins sending gifts, bridesmaids laughing. They thought I was somewhere crying. They thought the story was already over. I typed my reply. Fine. Then real family can cover their own bills. I didn't wait for anyone to respond. I started attaching files. One by one. Slowly enough that the notifications would stack up on their phones like dominoes. Catering. Invoice. Paid. DJ contract. Paid. Florist arrangements. Paid. Photography deposit. Paid. Each one with my name on the billing line and the event details underneath, green PAID stamps clearly visible. Then I called the vendors. It was late, so I left voicemails for a few of them. But the catering company had an online portal. I logged in, found the event, and hit cancel. It asked me if I was sure. It warned me about non-refundable fees. I clicked yes, without hesitating. The florist, a warm, meticulous woman named Mrs. Caldwell, who I'd had coffee with twice to discuss Natalie's fixation on white hydrangeas, received a direct email from me before midnight. Please cancel the order immediately. The financing for this event has been withdrawn. I canceled every single one. Back in the group chat, the reactions had shifted from mockery to confusion, but not yet panic. Natalie sent a text. Okay. Bitter much. Courtney posted a meme that didn't quite make sense. They were still laughing. Still sure I was bluffing. They had no idea the ATM had just permanently closed. The next morning, I made coffee before I checked my phone. That felt important somehow. I opened the window above my kitchen sink and just stood there for a minute, letting the cold October air come through. smelling like wet leaves and the faint smoke of someone's fireplace down the street. My mind was quieter than it had any right to be. When I finally opened the group chat, the tone had completely inverted overnight. Natalie, please tell me she's kidding. She actually canceled the vendors? That's insane. This is low, Camille. Even for you. Then my mother appeared in the thread. Messages arriving in a rapid burst. You need to fix this right now. It's your sister's big day. She was stressed. She didn't mean it. You do not blow up a family event out of spite. Out of spite. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't insulted anyone. I hadn't shown up at her door, or made a single public statement. I just stopped paying for something I had never agreed to pay for in the first place. And somehow, I was the one acting out of spite. Then Natalie sent the message that actually landed. You were always jealous I was getting married first. You never wanted this for me. I put the phone down. Made a second cup of coffee I didn't drink. Mrs. Caldwell called me that afternoon. She sounded shaken. Natalie had apparently called her that morning, screaming, demanding the floral order be reinstated, insisting I had no legal right to cancel. But the contract had my name on it. The payment had come from my account. There was nothing to argue about. I thanked Mrs. Caldwell for her professionalism and told her I wouldn't be covering anything further. My father called that evening. My father, who communicates almost entirely through silence and sighs, who I could count on one hand the number of times he'd called me just to talk. He didn't ask how I was doing. He asked if I had really sabotaged Natalie's wedding. Then he asked if this was still about the car loan situation from 2 years ago. I told him it had nothing to do with any past argument. It was about being told I wasn't real family at the exact moment I was funding the entire event. He exhaled a long, slow sound of pure disappointment. You're embarrassing this family, Camille. I hung up. That night, I sent one last message to the group chat. Just one sentence. Wait for your wedding gift. Nobody responded. Here's the thing they all forgot about me. I used to live with Natalie. We shared a 2-bedroom apartment for almost 2 years when she was 25 and going through a rough stretch. I knew her routines, her habits, her passwords, some of which she'd never thought to change. And I knew about New Year's Eve. I hadn't planned to know. I'd been stumbling down the dark hallway around 1 a.m, half asleep, looking for a phone charger. I saw light coming from under her door. I pushed it open, or started to, and stopped cold. Natalie. And a man who was absolutely not her fiancé. Marcus. His name was Ryan. Her ex-boyfriend from college. The one she had described to me on multiple occasions as emotionally unavailable, manipulative. And her exact words, the biggest mistake I ever almost made. I backed away immediately. I hadn't meant to record anything. I'd been fumbling for my phone's flashlight in the dark hallway and hit the wrong icon. The footage was 18 seconds long, shot through a 2-inch gap in the door, slightly shaky. But the audio was perfectly clear. Natalie's voice, low and laughing. He's just a safety net. I don't love him the way I love you. I had closed the app. I had gone back to bed. I had told myself it wasn't my place. I had kept that video for 9 months. The wedding was held on a Saturday at a vineyard about 90 minutes outside the city. I wasn't on the guest list anymore, that had been made abundantly clear. But the event was family-run and casual. No hired security. No name check at the entrance. Natalie had assumed I wouldn't dare show my face after everything that had happened. That was her mistake. I wore a navy blue dress. Nothing flashy. Just enough to blend into the back of any crowd. I brought a card in a small white envelope and slipped it into the gift box near the guest book. Inside, I had written 6 words. Hope you enjoy the memories. I stood near the back during the ceremony and watched. Natalie looked stunning. Genuinely. Her dress was the kind that takes your breath away even when you're furious at the person wearing it. Marcus stood at the altar looking nervous in the way that people who believe in something tend to look nervous, like they understand the weight of what they're about to do. He seemed kind. He'd always seemed kind. That was actually the hardest part. When the officiant reached the final section of the ceremony, I took out my phone. The video was already queued up. I sent it to the family group chat, every aunt, uncle, cousin, and yes, Marcus, and then I stood very still and watched. I saw the exact moment Marcus felt his phone vibrate in his jacket pocket. He glanced down. His expression shifted in a way that was almost imperceptible. A slight tightening around the eyes. A flicker of something crossing his face. Then he looked up at Natalie, and then back down at the screen. So did my mother. So did 2 of my aunts. So did half the front row. Murmurs spread through the vineyard like a current. Marcus raised his hand, stopping the officiant mid-sentence. He turned to Natalie and said something quiet, something only she could hear, and held the phone screen up to her face. She went pale in an instant. She reached for it and he pulled it back, clean and sharp, and held it just out of her reach. Then he looked past her, scanning the crowd slowly until his eyes found me standing at the back. I walked forward, down the center aisle, Past every person in that family who had watched me get pushed out without a word. Past the white chairs and the floral arrangements and the string lights. I stopped a few feet from the altar. I didn't raise my voice. There was no need. You should all know who my sister really is. No one moved. No one interrupted. Even Natalie didn't speak for a long moment. She just stared at me with her mouth open, like she was trying to locate the right emotion to perform. Then she lunged. She knocked into the officiant's arm, reaching for me, screaming something I couldn't fully make out. It was fast and raw and desperate. But before she reached me, Marcus stepped between us. He caught her by the arm and held on. She turned on him next. He didn't let go, didn't raise his voice. Just stood there looking at her the way you look at someone you're seeing clearly for the very first time. He said 2 words. "Is it true?" She started crying. Not the graceful kind. The real kind, red-faced, gasping, barely coherent. She said she was sorry. She said it only happened once. She said it didn't mean anything. Marcus wasn't listening anymore. He was already walking. Off the altar, through the vineyard, into the parking lot. His car pulled out of the gravel driveway and disappeared down the road. Natalie collapsed onto the grass. Bridesmaids rushed to her. Our mother ran from the front row with her arms out. Nobody came near me. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror once. I turned my phone off for the rest of the afternoon. When I turned it back on that evening, I had 61 missed calls, a war zone of a group chat, and 1 voicemail from Natalie that I deleted without listening to. My father's message stood out among the rest. We will not tolerate this kind of public humiliation in this family. Not Natalie's cheating. Not the lie she'd been living for 9 months. Not what she said about Marcus being a safety net. The problem, according to my father, was that I had made them look bad. I left the group chat that night. Blocked Natalie's number. Went to bed. A week later, I got a call from Marcus. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. He wasn't angry. That surprised me most of all. He said he'd watched the video multiple times, not because he doubted it, but because he kept trying to understand how he'd missed it, the distance, the overcorrection, the way she'd been almost too affectionate in the weeks leading up to arguments. Like she was managing him, rather than loving him. "I don't know who I was about to marry," he said, "but I'm glad I didn't." He asked how I was doing. Genuinely, with no agenda behind it. I told him I didn't know. Not sad, exactly. Not angry anymore. Just empty. Like a room that had been rearranged in the night and I kept reaching for things that weren't where I'd left them. He said something I've thought about many times since. Sometimes we grieve people who were never really who we thought they were. That grief is real. Even if the version of them we're mourning never actually existed. I started therapy in January. Not because I felt broken. Because I didn't want to become numb to what had happened, to just quietly absorb it and move on and repeat the same patterns with someone else in 15 years. My therapist asked me one night, about 6 weeks in, what I was still waiting for my family to acknowledge. I sat with that question for a long time. Finally, I said, that I was enough without having to be useful. That was the wound underneath all of it. The one I hadn't known how to name. The reason I kept paying, kept fixing, kept showing up with solutions before anyone asked, because somewhere along the way I had decided that was the only version of me that earned a place at the table. I don't know exactly where Natalie is now. I heard through a mutual cousin that she and Ryan lasted about 2 months before it fell apart. Which surprised nobody. I heard she moved in with a friend. I heard she's doing okay. I don't wish her harm. I really don't. The anger has long since burned down to ash. But I also don't consider her my sister anymore. Not in any way that feels real or living. The sister I loved, the one from the beach trips and the birthday photos and the matching Christmas pajamas, I think she was real once. I think we were real once, but I was the only one still tending to something the other person had quietly walked away from years ago. And that's not something you can fix by paying for the flowers. Thanksgiving, I spent alone, watching a documentary about deep-sea shipwrecks, which felt oddly appropriate. Christmas was quiet too. Just me. A diner down the street. Pancakes. And the sound of the city going about its morning as though nothing remarkable had happened. It wasn't the life I expected to be living. But for the first time in longer than I can remember, it was entirely, completely mine. If there's a lesson in any of this, and I'm not sure there's one clean enough to tie a bow on, it's this. Being someone's safety net is not the same as being loved by them. Generosity isn't a currency you can trade for loyalty. And the people who make you feel like you have to earn your place in their lives were never really offering you one. You can't buy belonging. And you shouldn't have to. That's the part I'm still learning.